But I am delighted to be hosting GE Software and Bill here this evening or this afternoon, and I want to thank you all for coming. A little bit of a ad about Prediction Software. So we're a company that is specifically in the predictive analytics platform software business, and we've been in business for about 5 years. We're based in California with our development offices up in Redmond, Washington. And we've developed an end-to-end platform for the development and deployment of predictive analytics. And so we have a great platform tool that is appropriate for data scientists who are building out predictive analytics models, solutions, applications, but also a way to deploy it much more quickly than anyone else into production. And the concept of the business analyst and the subject matter expert being able to now do predictive analytics for the first time. And so this has typically and historically been a black art for many people, where the data scientists, the guys with the PhD, you know, the 1,000 guys that this guy has hired up in San Ramon to actually build out this incredible science. But these business analysts can now do it for the first time, and so it's a self-service kind of democratization of predictive analytics concept, which we've, I think, done very well. And we also have the ability to deploy it into production very quickly. So today, as an example, there will be 300 nurses who log on with an iPad or a browser at Carolina's health system, and they're in real time getting predictive risk scores for their patients in the hospital, and then prescriptive interventions recommended to them about what to do throughout their shift, which they go and perform and then come back and log into the software. And that drops into the system and then makes the predictive application much more accurate each time. So we're doing some really innovative things. We're delighted to, in our Series C round of investment last year, bring on GE Software as an investor. And we raised a $21 million round. That was led by Accenture, who are a global alliance partner and distributor of our software. And we have partnerships with a number of different software partners in the ecosystem. But we're becoming more and more embedded into the GE infrastructure and some of their initiatives at different business units. And I met Bill last year after he sponsored the investment in Prediction along with Brett and others from GE Software, so thank you very much for that. And we had an incredible dinner in San Francisco where I was invited by Jeff Immelt, the CEO of GE, to attend this dinner, and I kind of ignored the email for a while because I thought it was just like this spam email to about 1,000 people, and I imagined this huge ballroom with thousands of people and Jeff getting up and being the keynote speaker. And I get a call from Mike Dolbeck at GE Software Ventures, and he said, "Why are you ignoring Jeff Immelt?" I said, "Well, I'm not. Why?" And he said, "Well, you need to respond to this RSVP to this dinner." So I did, and I showed up, and there was a restaurant which was cleared out of all tables except one with about 12 seats at it. And I'm like, uh-oh, this is real, and Jeff Immelt's going to be there. So we all sat down. As people streamed in, Bill Ruh comes in with Jeff, his boss, the CEO, and I'm thinking, wow, that's the CEO. This guy's pretty famous. And then walks Mark Benioff, the founder, CEO of Salesforce.com, Paul Maritz, who's a bit of a legend from the old Microsoft days and doing some interesting things these days, the founder of VMware, the founder of Box.com, and I was sitting in between Benioff and Aaron Levy all night thinking, wow, this is a surreal evening. It was actually very cool. So we had an incredible discussion that evening about the state of the industrial internet and predictive analytics as it relates to what GE are investing billions and billions of dollars into. So when we had the opportunity to put this event together tonight, thought no better speaker than Bill. So with that, I will introduce Bill Ruh, who is the CEO of GE Software and is the man and the brains behind this initiative that everyone's hearing about in San Ramon. So with that, thanks a lot for coming, Bill.
Thank you, Simon. It's great to be here. So we'll make this interactive, as interactive as you want it to be. And so feel free to ask questions as we go along. And you know, I think I just start with a little bit about GE so that you put in context why we care about this predictive analytics so much. And I think, you know, people think of us mostly this way. You know, last Dow Jones company, 150 billion annual revenue, and 300,000 employees. Oftentimes people think that we're all making refrigerators and light bulbs, and that is lighting is the oldest business in GE, But the fact is it's the smallest business in GE as well. And so we still, certainly down in Home and Business Solutions, it's an acronym for lighting and appliances. So we still sell lights and light bulbs and appliances. But we'll talk a little bit about this, but even a light bulb is changing what it is. But for us, the 6 big businesses are all industrial. So it's aviation and healthcare, and it's power generation, it's oil and gas, it's energy management. And the thing that's interesting for us is what we make is everything we make is how our customers make money. And that's an important part of what we care about. So we make locomotives, so rails, without a locomotive you can't make money. Without a gas turbine, utility can't make money. Without a jet aircraft engine, it's hard to fly a plane. So for us, these businesses make the devices that our customers count on to generate their revenue stream. So they own a very important piece of real estate in their market. And I think as you look at us and you look at the rest of the world and you think about your own opportunities, there'll be opportunities for everybody to think about how they can help other companies as well who make these machines that are essentially at the center point of how these big industries make money. Because at the end of the day, if you can help them with that asset become more optimized, or the operations around an asset, that's what they care about, because that's all about how they generate revenue and how they deliver to their customers value. So for us, these 6 businesses are industrial businesses, and they represent about 70% overall of the company. Used to be capital was a lot bigger part, but the company has moved and done a lot with selling off some of the capital assets, and we announced we're taking the retail part out public because in the end we are an industrial company with a capital arm that supports that, but in the end that's still a fairly large bank, it turns out, in the grand scheme of things. So this is what GE is today, with a grand focus on this whole industrial, and this is where a lot of the stuff we're doing focuses here. But it turns out it's already starting to bleed over into this space as well. And when I talk about it, is what we make is going to change. And I want you to think about it this way. A light bulb has not changed, except back in the early part of the 1900s, there was one change to the original light bulb, and that was the filament. And the filament, the big discovery was how to make a filament last longer. And it was a long time ago, probably 80 years ago. And since then, the light bulb, incandescent light bulb, has changed. Basically, an incandescent light bulb is 60 watts with one service called on or off and 0 lines of code. Our current light bulbs that we sell, which are not really light bulbs, but street lighting, we sell street lights. And the way to think about a street light is now a fraction of the watts, but generates as much lumens as you would. But it turns out it's got many services. So think of a service as not just on or off, but the level it's at, the color it's at, and how it gets used. So think of a service as being brighten up when the emergency vehicle is coming down the street. Or think of a service as police officers saying turn up all the lights to maximum lumens for 1,000 yards. Those are services a light bulb doesn't do to get today, but those are the services people actually want with a light bulb. So a light bulb is now 20 million lines of code. That's a very different kind of thing than we used to sell. So when you even think about the future, we've got this idea of hardware meets software, and even the most simple things we're finding are becoming services oriented. And when you think of a light bulb being services oriented, most people don't think that way, but that's what's happening. Is hardware's meeting software. There are going to be new ecosystems and new players because what we're talking about is different. We'll talk a little bit about this. And there are new technologies that are required. And I think when we talk about new technologies, what we're finding is a shift. It used to be the big applications in the last 15 years were transactions. Any transaction you could automate, you automate it. We're done. There's not many more transactions to automate. We're working at the edges. We're making it cheaper to do transactions. We're making it faster to do transactions. We're making the transactions look better. But in the end, the idea of automating transactions and automating the paper world is really coming an end. And what's happening now is we're moving into a new world where the automation is around devices, the automation is around analytics. And so before, if you were really good at writing a transaction, and you could build a transaction app, that was great. But if you look at the idea of the next generation apps are going to be built by people who build analytics and wrap the application around it. So we think the greatest opportunities people in these worlds is analytic-based applications, which are different, we think, than transaction-based. So this whole idea of the digital and physical worlds colliding is really what is the big driver as we see it. And as we look at it, we look to the idea of why now and what's this about. And I think that when you start to look, and I show this to you guys get this, but let me tell you, when I go into guys who make machines, they go, I don't get this software hardware thing. So just take this with a grain of salt. But I'll tell you, when I tell people this when I go into other parts of the world, and I was with a big automaker in Europe and had the same conversation, they're thinking about, a car very differently. So for them, a lot of companies who are in the physical world don't think this way. So take this with a grain of salt. But what I like to tell them is that, why do they have to think about it now? And I think somehow you've got, if you're working, quite honestly, with people who are in the old world, the physical world, they don't always know why they have to change. So when I talk about it, I talk about the fact that we're at the same point we were with the consumer internet back in the 90s, where if you go back then, and you all remember back then, we knew 1 billion people were going to get connected, but if you were in the retail space, and our friends from McKinsey showed up and said, look, they knew you could get great research that showed what was going to happen, right? And they were talking about how the world was going to change as 1 billion people got connected. They saw all of this happening, and everybody had access to that, and they could follow a path if they chose. But then you look and say, why? What is it that they didn't choose to act upon that knowledge? And they said, boy, if I go to my customers and I ask them about getting connected, they don't know they don't tell me that. They tell me, I want lower prices in stores, and I want cheaper products, or I want more choice in stores, and I want coffee bars in stores. So what did they do? They put coffee into stores, and they added more to stores, and they made bigger stores. But the fact is, they ignored the 1 billion people getting connected, even though there was clear line of sight to the importance of that happening. Yet, today, we all know that online retail, and just look at Alibaba now as the largest retailer in the world, we all know we should be in that business. It's just too late, right? By the time it's obvious, it's too late. So when I talk to a lot of the machine people, I say, everybody had a chance in the early part to know the research, to know 1 billion people are going to get connected. The question of what you did with that was really important. And the thing is that, of course, now all of these markets have been changed. And who makes music hasn't changed. And who writes books hasn't changed. What's changed is how you distribute it, how you consume it, how you sell it, how you maintain it, how you monetize it. That's the thing that changed. Now that's important because I think we have a lesson to learn from the last 15 years of the consumer internet. And I think that the way we see this playing out is now, there's a lot of great research. McKinsey has done a lot of this research, for example, and they talk about 50 billion machines getting connected. Are we thinking today, like we were thinking, was 1 billion people getting connected on the internet going to change things? And what would I do? Are we thinking about that research in the same way, right? And I think for us, we do think 50 billion machines getting connected is going to change things in the industrial world, just like 1 billion people getting connected or 3 billion people getting connected change things in the consumer world. And this to us is, the time is now. And if you don't deal with it in the next 5 years, we actually think that after 5 years, you're either in the game or you're getting beaten by people who got in the game. And for us, we see as we talk to our suppliers and we talk to our partners and we talk to our customers, I think that that message resonates with them. So the idea is, I don't know exactly how I'm going to make money in this, and GE doesn't know exactly how we're going to make money in it, but if I don't do something about it, I stand the risk of someone else coming in, and I may make the jet aircraft engine, that's not going to go away, but everything from how I distribute it, manage it, maintain it is going to change. And that's really where the money is to be made. So I want you to think about not that the products are going to still be made, but if you take a company like GE, a big chunk of how we, our bottom line comes not from the selling of the machine, but from the management and maintenance over 20 years of the machine. And that's really the opportunity we see as machines get connected, is not so much the connectivity, which IoT really talks about everybody getting connected. It's what's it going to change in the value chain of what happens when the machine gets connected. And why is that important? It's because most everybody who builds machines makes the money in servicing, maintaining the machine over a long period of time in the industrial world. And so as a result, if all that changes in the same way the consumer side did, well then we're going to have a whole new set of players in everything from how I distribute to consume to operate and maintain those machines. And that is why this idea of predictive analytics will be important, because that's going to be the capability that allows you to move from today's world to tomorrow's world, where the whole ecosystem of this kind of connection is going to foundationally be remade in how we distribute, consume, manage, and maintain all of these big industrial capabilities. So for us, we think of, and Gartner coined this term of OT versus IT, which IT is, traditionally I think of software and transactional ERP. OT is when you use that same technology in a factory, etc. And the difference, I think, is that we all think, well, factories are automated. It's amazing how limited the automation is in a factory compared to where it will be. It's amazing how limited a supply chain is automated. And much of it's proprietary systems, unconnected, multiple databases, no insight. What does that sound like? Sounds like the world of ERP before ERP. And that's kind of where we are in these industrial spaces. We're going to see analytics become predictive because, and I'll show you this, the money to be made in the world, in the industrial world, is predicting pretty much three things. One, if you can predict how to better or get more efficiency out of an asset's resources, I either on a wind turbine figure out how to generate more electricity from the same wind, or on a gas turbine, less gas to generate the same amount or more electricity. So if I can reduce fuel consumption or get better efficiency, then I can make a ton of money. How much is that worth? Well, what's the number one cost in the airline industry? Jet fuel. It's probably $300 billion a year is spent on jet fuel. So we all know 1% of that, is worth $3 billion a year. So if you can figure out how to do 2, 3, 4% efficiency, and you can't, jet engines are not like software. You can't come out with a new version every 3 to 6 months. So you can't change the physics of what you got that you bought that's got to last 20 years. What you can change is how you use it. So the idea of how analytics can become predictive and change the nature of how we do everything from distribute to manage to operate a machine is the opportunity. The second major application is zero unplanned downtime. And the cost in the I'll stay with the aviation industry. There's two things you hate, a delay or a cancellation. 41% of all delays and cancellations is because of mechanical error. If I can catch it ahead of time and fix it, 41% of all delays go away. Now, the other two are air traffic controllers and weather. And we're more likely to fix the weather before we fix an air traffic control system. So you can't get rid of every problem, but you can get rid of main problems. Employee, the third major one is an operation around it. So I want you you take anything like a repair facility. If I can make the whole repair more efficient, and the repair being efficient, and I want you to think about this, is a lot of times you'll make the efficiency about when you bring it in, fixing the thing you think's broken. But what if I looked out over 10 years and I said, if I fixed another thing now, over the life cycle, I'm going to save more money? that ability to know what to repair over a longer cycle is really hard. But again, this is where analytics will come in. So those three things are, we think, going to be the center point of application building in the industrial world. Employee productivity, machines self-healing and automated, monitoring and maintenance is mobilized. The idea of sort of changing the whole value chain inside this is, we think, happening as we speak. When I talk to the automakers, you didn't see autos in ours, but it turns out everybody comes and says, what are you doing? How do I do it? And we talk to the automakers, it's really interesting that, you know, they certainly worry about how we get in electric cars, right? You know, they all see that. But what they really see is the idea of maintenance and experience. In fact, you know, many of them told me they look at Tesla not so much as as people are buying electric cars, although that's a piece of it. They think people love the experience of a Tesla. Oh, connectivity, that becomes a big reason why people buy when they do surveys. So, you know, it's not just the electric side, it's just the connectivity side. Well, what if you know, could connect, someone could come with a little box, connect onto your car, you know, there's a port on your car that is a standard port, and it talked onto a cell phone. And what if that looked at all the things going in your car, and instead of doing maintenance on a schedule, what if it told you when to maintain what? And what if it told you where the 3 places to go to do it cheaper? And what if it's scheduled for you if you just clicked on it? And what if the parts were ordered and it got you cheaper parts? Would you like that? Well, it turns out if it's under warranty, you care less. But it turns out once it's off warranty, you care a lot. And off warranty is a huge market. So the minute something goes off warranty, this market, you might say, well, that sounds cool, but nobody's going to do that. People are doing that now. And so imagine, and the device, $20, you can build that device, plug it in every car. You can say, look, as long as you come through me, it's free. And by the way, we'll tell you when something's going to break before it breaks. I know I'd like to know before it breaks. And if you really could catch 100% of that, it changes everything. So this is the kind of thing we see kind of going on in the market. For us, 50 billion machines aren't important. For us, this is it. We care about this 1.5 million machines. You look at 50 billion and say, well, that's not really, you know, you're only 1.5 million of 50 billion connected machines. But it turns out these are pretty important machines that we sell. And the fact is, again, they're all in the middle of how our customers make money. So for us, our first, you know, where we start is our own machines. We're thinking about our own machines. And so, you know, as you look at this, this is the big issue. And what's going to matter is getting data from the largest ever install base of equipment. And those who have great data coupled with great analytics, those are going to be, we think, the winners in what's going to be this changing market. The other thing we think a lot about is that there's a change in architecture. And so there was sort of the traditional old IT stack. And we started down this path. We said, who manages data well and does great analytics? And it was the consumer internet folks. They do it at a cost and price point that no one else can match. So if you look at the current generation of folks who are, you know, as-a-service companies or the consumer internet guys, they can help you manage data. And then I want you to think about this. If you manage data and it costs you $25,000 a year per terabyte, and someone else can help you manage it for $3,000 per terabyte, is there a strategic advantage to a business that can manage it at that kind of different prices? And the answer is yes, because if you're going to be competing on data, you've got to think about this idea of how do you manage data at a cost per terabyte with great analytics that you can afford. Because the data is going to kind of go like this, and the value of data is high. You may find you can do the analytics, but not at price points that you can offer your customers that they can be willing to afford. Yet someone may come from the side and bring a technology and reduce the cost. Now, why do I give you those price points? Because those price points at dollars per terabyte are in line with some very high-end traditional data management techniques versus some of the newer, lower-cost data management techniques. And we looked and said, that's how you got to think about things. So we look at things like big data and analytics as not just I'm in it, but how am I going to do it at the right price points and collection, et cetera. And when you start to think about it, it's not the old structures. You're going to have new structures. Otherwise, someone's going to come from the side, we think, and be able to do it at a lower cost. Sensors are becoming more important. Cloud computing, how do you fit in the cloud? Mobile. And then we think that the IT security market is going to have a hard time securing the way things work today. You can't take the, virus detection doesn't work in a gas turbine. Malware detection doesn't work. It's a different set of attacks. So when you look at securing a valve or a gas turbine, there is a whole new market we see coming out in this whole OT security world to take and secure machines. And so for us, we look at that there was a new, broader OT market that will appear. And it's going to look more like the consumer internet guys in terms of price points, but it's going to have some other technologies to work in the industrial setting. And so this, we think, is going to be in itself an interesting market that will appear, is how do we take old machines and suddenly make them intelligent and make them work effectively in this market. Because if you have a gas turbine and it stops working because of the software, you're not going to reboot it. It just doesn't work that way. Unless people are mad when their cell phone drops a call, and then sometimes you have to power it up and power it down, and you're not sure why. If you got to do that with a gas turbine and tell 1 million customers why the electricity stops, it turns out people get much more angry about losing electricity than losing a cell phone, than not even their cell phone for a limited period of time. There's certain things they think are unalienable rights: water, electricity, safety, those kind of things, and healthcare, of course. So we do think, however, that while the second generation platform kind of replaced the first generation, we kind of see this second and third generation living together because the transactional systems will exist. Somebody just scored. See,
we started the microphone out there. They like this part.
You're great, Keith. I like that. But we think this third generation platform is really coming. How this is going to play out, I don't know. But I do think this is the big change. And it's going to be, how do you take cloud, analytics, intelligent machines, infrastructure, mobility, and make them work together? And for us, we've made an investment in our, call it OT application. This is an application platform. It's not the underpinning platform. For us, partnering is a big part of it. So the working with Predictions is a very important part of thinking about bringing capability to the customers we have. Not that we're going to be great at building a cloud, or we're going to be great at building these kind of tools. What we want to be great at is the actual content and domain knowledge and data coming in and working on top of it. So for us, the idea of Predix is a platform that we think about that has the ability to live in a machine or live in the cloud. And this is important because some processing has to occur right at the machine. And when you think about the world of the consumer internet, however, everything goes in the cloud. If you're not connected, a lot of your iPhone apps, iPad apps stop working if you're not connected. Well, you can't, again, stop working if your connectivity isn't there for a gas turbine. So we think the idea of this distributed development is one of the key differences in the OT world. But for us, we're thinking about one architecture, modular, faster development, secure connectivity from machine into the cloud. And so we've thought about this architecture a lot. And we think really the time is now versus 5 years from now or 5 years ago. And it's because the technology is at a point that you can actually do this. The data, the kinds of data, is more and more machine data being generated. I'll come back to analytics. The sensors are out there to generate the data. The connectivity is there for you to deliver this through cloud vendors and service providers. The kinds of application needs are there. But in the end, at the cornerstone of the value, those that have the best analytics win. And so for us, we look and say, where and how are you going to build the best analytics, because the rest of this is enablement. The value to get this is in the analytics. So it's all of these working together, but that's why we think now and what we think is important and how I think you should look at it. So a couple of other things is we've actually rethought development as well. We've moved to agile and extreme programming in this. We've gone to 90-day delivery cycles on building any kind of application. And for us, this idea of how you're going to have the ability to generate more apps than ever before. And I'd say we're focused on doing this for ourselves, but most of the people I talk to who are in similar businesses, they're looking for others to come in and help them figure out how to get here. So we think there's a great opportunity as you look out there to think about predictive analytics as either something you're building for yourself or you're building for others in a big, broader ecosystem. But getting the ability right to have the right tool sets to deliver those applications is really important. I think that's where you've got to rethink and make sure you're in line with how are you going to build these at a scale and a speed that's going to be game changing. And finally, I'd say for us, then it's figuring out in any customer environment, what is the kind of things that are going to be the big levers for them. And because you can build any kind of analytic, we feel, to solve any problem. But for us, we've spent a lot of time, say, in aviation and said, okay, where are the biggest impacts? Well, air turnbacks are costly, decrease in workforce productivity, any added maintenance costs. So this is the cost per day across the airline industry for delays and cancellations. This is the cost for loss per cancellation. There's a cost of loss per delay. So the ability to even attack this one problem in this industry, if you have a solution, if you've got great analytics, this is the kind of thing that, that they're going to be buying. And what we think is that we've moved to a point of feature function outcomes. So how do you take the idea of building analytics that are outcome based? That is a change in thinking and selling outcomes. So we look at the idea then of workforce, effective workforce or reduced maintenance, on-time performance, customer satisfaction, and delivering these outcomes. If we're finding if you can deliver an outcome, they are there's a lot of opportunity in this application space. And a good example for us when we did this is we picked outcome in fuel management. Remember I said fuel efficiency can be important. Sensors, data, analytics, that's what it's all about. But when we analyze and we sold this outcome to Gol, which is a relatively, I'd say, mid-size Brazilian airline, and this is for every flight through this analytics, 77 gallons of fuel and over 1,600 pounds of CO2, we're showing them as a savings. So we do analytics in real time, giving them guidance on how to fly the plane more effectively, including speeds and approaches and everything else. And by making very simple changes that the pilot didn't know about, they didn't know that simple insights like this, changing their behavior, they're pretty happy when someone tells them you could do this or that, but they still make the decision. But at the end of the day, giving them that insight is leading to this. Now, when we show them this, that's, it may not seem like a lot, but when you talk about millions of flights a day, it becomes large across the industry. So this is how we think about packaging, selling, distributing. And think about it this way, if someone came and told someone how to manage our engines better, we suddenly become just the provider of the engine, not the person who's the long-term services partner. So for us, I look at the kinds of things that are going to be game-changing that in the architecture we think about. So we're thinking about things like, how do we deal with in-memory? So you can do great analytics, but how are you going to store the data, manage the data, get performance? Most of the things we see are real-time. And by the way, there's a big market in memory. So some ways, some people are focusing inside a segment. Of course, we think of the whole solution. We think of large volume of data transfers because moving a lot of data can be very expensive. So you don't always want to move everything, but the idea of connectivity and how you move data is important. We're working through with every customer on airlines to move to get full flight data. Now you would have thought we'd have done this before, but we didn't. So full flight data for us, we're in the midst of looking at collecting and helping provide them these kinds of insights. If we collect full flight data from all of our customers, it's about 2 to 4 petabytes a year. So that's a lot of data. And again, got to manage that at very low cost. What are you going to do with it is, you got to be able to deal with the idea of distributed processing. So if you're doing this in real time. But for us, the two things we think about, and when we look at this idea of predictive analytics, it's really, I say it this way, some people hate this, but it is true. It's really the return of AI. We just don't call it that. But all the things we all loved in the 80s, hated in the 90s, and then started making money in the 2000s, we now can say, AI's finally come to fruition where we know how to make money at AI. And at the end of the day, AI is, can you build great algorithms using a set of tools that will get you there faster? And as we look at that, that's what this is about. This idea of using these kind of capabilities. And I think the US won. So then the intelligent machines is the final thing, which is, in a lot of cases, you got to think about packaging this not just in the cloud, but how it might be packaged closer into the machine. So the ability to have tools that give you the flexibility to run it closer to the machine or in the cloud. It's very important to have that kind of capability. So for us, this is how we see the world moving forward. We think that there's a great opportunity as machines get connected in every industry to think about how you can make money. And some folks, some of the old guard like us, we're already starting there. But I'll say most people, they're sitting there thinking what to do. And we're really talking that through and educating them. But I think what's going to happen is everybody is going to have to retool, rethink their architecture, and they're going to make more bets in this idea of analytics, machine intelligence, distributed processing, and how you manage data. And when you start to think of that world, they're going to want to monetize it. And at the end of the day, we're going to move into an outcome-based application market. And so where the consumer internet today is really about lifestyle, if you think about it. All the applications are about your lifestyle, and everybody picks and chooses from thousands of apps what their lifestyle is about. The world of the industrial side is going to move to thousands of opportunities for outcomes. And they're going to pick and choose the outcomes that they think have the greatest value and combine them. And so those who can come with the best analytics and the best insights and sell them an outcome is going to win. Those companies that have the best insights are going to become much more efficient, greater return on asset. They're going to win. And we are seeing that the demand is starting to build. So certainly from our perspective, we've done that. We think this is the reason I come here. So why do we invest is an important part of our future is having the right technology at the right price points with the right capabilities. Speed is important, analytics is important, and certainly the ability to do this at scale. So I don't know if that made sense to you, but that's how we see the world. And I take any questions or thoughts.
Question for you. As you roll this out to either manufacturing partners or to end customers of your goods, how is their reaction regarding data privacy and trust? Because in the consumer internet, we don't have any. I mean, we're candid, we have none, and it's been given to the NSA anyway.
Yeah.
But in the industrial world, at the beginning of your presentation, you said, we build machines that help our customers make money.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, the intelligence and insights on the performance of that machine is a competitive advantage for your customer. Mm-hmm. And if that were to get out, then perhaps we now know how much a particular company is producing. Yeah. And ergo, we can predict their valuation and their quarter maybe. And I'm curious, are people asking or demanding certain privacy rights as they talk to you, or is that too far out?
No. I think it's very top of mind. Plus, and this is the difference, the consumer world is like the Wild West. I mean, anybody can do anything, anytime. The second thing is that about the consumer world is everybody's an expert because we all buy stuff. So as a result, we all think we know that industry pretty well. You get into some of these industries, there are some differences. One is they're highly regulated. So it turns out they all have certain regulations about data already. The second thing is most of them are critical infrastructures. So countries have certain regulations about critical infrastructure data. You know, take Saudi Arabia, where no critical infrastructure data can leave the country. So there's already a lot of regulation. Except it's different than privacy, but it's related. Okay, I think that. So there's a little more complexity in that there's already a lot there. The second thing I would say about this is, however, is that customers aren't going to say, "Ooh, here's my data. Do what you want with it." And there has to be the value. You know, you have to provide value. Now, for us, we provide the engines. We already sell them the engines. It's in everyone's interest that we know how to make the engine better, you know, it helps to give a better design. It helps us maintain it better. The second thing is we have the service relationship with them. So if we can help them service it much more efficiently, give them greater time on wing for that engine, and reduce cancellations delay, that's a win-win for everybody. And certainly if we're saving them money, there's a way for us to monetize that where we're selling them an outcome, they only pay on the outcome and so on. So I think what you have to do is like anything else, this is probably different than the consumer world, but value has to change. And the reason we're willing in the consumer world to allow, you know, pick your favorite, you know, Google's a good example because it's just so visible to everyone. We give up all that information because the value transfer is we get to search things. So there's a value transfer that gets made, whether we deliberately said it or not, that we wanted to let them use the data, that's a different issue. I think that in this world, however, you have to be very upfront about it. Here's the data we're collecting, here's how we use it, and this is what we'll do with it. And so for us, you know, there are customers that say, look, I'm okay with you having the data for 60 days. Okay, so we have to live within the rights that they have provided to us, and you have to live up to the guarantees you've given them. And that's different than the consumer world where it's a little more hazy. So for us, though, you get time to do the analysis to give them more value, and you don't necessarily have to keep all the data. I'd also say sometimes you don't want to keep the data because there's all kinds of issues when you have it, which is then, you know, it's all something that, you know, if there's some legal issue, you might get, you know, you might have to produce data because you collected it, right? So there's I think there's a lot of issues here that people have to think through. But in the end, I don't think it's going to be like the consumer world. It's going to be different. That there has to be a clear value proposition of why you're doing it, what value both sides get out of it. You have to be a company that is a great custodian, not owner, custodian of the data, and whatever you agree to, you have to live up to. So I think for us, we find that you know, there's always a discussion, but fortunately, we need the data to do the work for them that we've contracted to do. So it's just part and parcel of what we do.
Hey, Bill, along the lines that it's, you know, a lot different than the consumer internet. So, you know, the industrial areas obviously are very heavy with a lot of tradition, a lot of way of doing things, everything from systems to business models. So, are you finding, even though you have a relatively captive audience through your business units into your end customers, how much effort are you guys putting into to be able to define those use cases by industry, to be able to have your teams and your customers basically make the commitment to make these, you know, relatively large leaps?
So the reason I showed you this is that we're doing that at a fairly in-depth level for every industry we're in. And you know, this isn't, you know, this is a cartoon chart that shows some of the data. But how you turn that into what you do there is the magic. So we spent a lot of time working through this to think through the outcome. With that said, and I think this is where startups can be sometimes a little more nimble, is that you get caught up thinking in the box too much and get caught up with the customer does it this way. And so you get surprised because someone comes in and does it a totally different way. And for us, keeping that sort of stress on is important. I think we're fortunate in that our corporate marketing team, led by Beth Comstock, has been very big on making sure you look at the innovative side of things and question the status quo. And because of that, I think we end up a little, some good tension of pushing innovation next gen with this is the way we've always done things to balance it out so you don't go down too many rat holes. But you have to be willing to take some risks. You got to be willing to fail. And that's what big companies sometimes are not as good at, because anybody fails, well, that's a bad thing. Well, a startup, when you fail, oh, I learned something, let me change it and do something better. So I leave you the one answer that we get a lot of credit, and recently I think the investors are giving us credit for a process that came out through our corporate marketing called FastWorks. And what FastWorks does is we took the startup experience, Eric Ries's book, Startup Experience, and Eric helped, a number of other people. We took a number of opinions about a startup, and we applied it to how we think through this and how we do it. Because it's not the ideas. We got plenty of ideas. The real problem is idea to turn to something real. And this idea of a minimally viable product and quick turnaround. Speed's more important than feature function. And once you learn something, change. And you see that FastWorks is now being applied not only to our software world, but we came out with a new gas turbine to fill a hole in our product line in years, a couple of years, rather than multiple years, which is amazing in this business. We've come out and worked with companies like Quirky on the consumer side and came out with a whole new air conditioner that we probably would never have built on our own. So, each of these are things that we're trying to get to that innovation coupled with our strength, which is scale. So if we can scale, if we get the right thing, the innovation side, I think the FastWorks is how we're trying to do that. But it probably is one of the harder things to do in a big company, the innovator's dilemma. Other questions?
What are the mobile operators on this big service providers?
Yeah. So all of them have an IoT, at least all the ones I know of have an IoT. Let me actually say it differently, because now that just looking at, we would segment the operators in, there's probably 3 buckets, but I'll simplify it to 2.
And my real question was actually, who's leading?
Yeah.
Because I've talked to a lot of them, and they say something, but I don't really see them.
So I think that they're all early on trying to figure this out, right? But when you begin to look at the ones that we look at that are, let's say, they have good programs, they're in the early stages, it's the AT&Ts, it's the SoftBanks, we see Vodafone doing some interesting things, we see Verizon doing some interesting things. Those 4 all have some programs in place that we look at. When you look at how many machines do they, and I'm talking about real machines, not cell phones and PCs and that kind of stuff, but we're still in the millions, not in the tens of millions or hundreds of millions. And I think that's where that's to me, what we look at is this business only, either flames out or lives and dies on how many machines get connected by 2020. The 50 billion number is sort of out there, but the question is, how many are really going to be managed online and so on? And right now we're in the, we're probably in the low tens of millions globally, not the hundreds of millions, and certainly not the billions yet. So I think that's what you probably see, as well.
Chicken and egg problem.
Yeah. On the other hand, I would say when you look at the growth rates are interesting. For the ones, for ones that we've talked to or we've seen public information, there's some really positive growth rates. And I think this is like the cell phone game. You know, those who have the most assets under management, you know, that's what you're looking for, volume, right? This is, now for us, I just want to be clear, we're not a volume. The industry we serve have volume. Our stuff is big, massive. There's a ton of machines on a locomotive, but you know, we kind of treat it like one thing, but it'll connect a lot of machines. And anyway, those are some, you know, some interesting things about that market.
Good question. So Amazon started out building software and hosting for their own use, and then created AWS and started offering it to the general population, and that became massive, the tail that wagged the dog. How do you think about that in the industrial space? Are you building a platform now that is for internal use only, but one day could be a service that you could offer to other companies?
Well, we started out exploring and doing it as an internal only. You know, if you look at 2 years ago, we started that. And by the end of last year, we had as much demand as we could handle for it externally. And so we're certainly taking it out externally to our customers.
But outside of your customer base, though?
So I'd say, you know, just watch this. Well, what I can announce is it's already been announced, so I'm not saying anything that's not public, is we have announced, for example, with SoftBank, that we are going after non-GE markets with SoftBank with Predix. So I think you just watch. We see that certainly it's applicable as a application layer to manage, monitor, diagnose machines using our analytics. But we see also, and as you're aware, we point you at a lot of our at a lot of these folks because we think that they need the same tool sets we need, and we'll figure, you know, that's where you know, it's great to be partnered up. But I think that, yeah, we're working through the final strategy, but the SoftBank was one we announced recently. Other questions? Well, good.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you much.
I really
appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Well, thanks a lot for coming, everyone. So just a couple of housekeeping items. You have one of these. They made us buy a lot of wine to take this place tonight. So everyone gets a free bottle of wine, so pick your poison, stick it in, and take it home with you. And
the extra ones?
no, I'm taking those. But we're open for another hour and a half, I guess, until 7 o'clock. So enjoy and mingle, and thanks a lot for coming.